pyro erupts from the entranceway as Jim Ross goes on to say, "It's Wednesday. You know what that means." Welcome to another action-packed episode of AEW Dynamite, folks, and we are just a week out from the bloodiest night on the AEW calendar, Blood and Guts. It will not be for the faint-hearted JR. There is plenty to get through here tonight, though, as AEW champion Jon Moxley teams up with Kenny Omega as they both take on CM Punk and Brody King in the main event. The Blood and Guts match will also be revealed here later tonight. And that's not all, gentlemen, because tonight the Native Beast finally gets her hands on Dr. Britt Baker, and we'll also hear from Tessa Blanchard on her journey to becoming the next Women's Champion. Plus, after beating his brother Rey Fenix last week, Penta has requested more singles action tonight, and he's been granted that as he takes on Hangman Adam Page. But up next, Cody is set to face Kipp Sabian after last week's confrontation. So we are in front of 8,806,000 fans here at the Denver Coliseum for what I'm sure is going to be a fantastic episode of Dynamite. So tonight, you can expect the debut of the Acclaimed, Nyla Rose against Dr. Britt Baker finally. We've also got that big match between Hangman Adam Page and Penta El Zero M. Should be a good one. On the main event, Kenny Omega teams up with the world champion Jon Moxley as they take on CM Punk and Brody King of Culture Shock. But up next, Cody Rhodes against Kipp Sabian. So the lights go out in the arena as up next, Cody Rhodes against Kipp Sabian to kick the action off on Dynamite this week. As Cody begins to make his entrance up on the raised platform, he gets attacked behind by Kipp, who seems to be in a bit of a hurry. Kipp clubbing away at Cody's back over and over, fists flying. He just seems so relentless, Kipp Sabian. And then he rolls Cody into the ring, goes for a quick cover, looking to finish this one early, but Cody kicks out at 2, which then leads into the match, which is a brilliant match. It gets to 77 in about that, had great heat and good wrestling. Cody Rhodes defeats Kipp Sabian in 13 minutes 11. Cody Rhodes had to go over in this match, but we've seen over the last couple of weeks a bit of a confrontation between Cody, Miro. Miro decided to take his frustrations out on Trent last week. He would not let go of that game over submission move, and Cody Rhodes thought, wow, I've got to stop this, I've got to get involved. And then there was a bit of a confrontation between Kipp Sabian, who pushed Cody Rhodes. Well, after this match anyway, Cody Rhodes has his arm raised. Miro steps up onto the ring apron, the TNT champion making his presence known, maybe thinking about attacking Cody, but he decides not to in the end. Cody turns around and sees Miro emotionless. Both stare at one another before Miro steps down and gathers Kipp and helps him to the back. So ultimately, well, I think we all know where this is leading at the moment. It seems too obvious. Could you just imagine a match between Miro and Cody Rhodes? I think you're looking at least towards the high 70s, even bumping into the 80s. Anyway, after that match, the private party of ACH, Will Hobbs, Mark Quinn and Isaiah Cassie make their entrance through the crowd and up the steps towards their private box, surrounded by security. The red velvet robe is pulled back as they enter to alcohol flowing and pretty ladies swaying. They take their seats, ready for Dynamite. So once again, in attendance are the private party, really enjoying where the story is going at the moment. But following that, the Acclaimed Max Caster and Anthony Bowens make their way out to the ring. Now, I wasn't going to be rapping, I wasn't going to write any lyrics, but Max Caster has a mic. His spitting lyrics dissing the Motor City Machine Guns, who they are about to take on, how their time has come, how they are past it. And he also delivers a cheap shot at the number 1 contenders for the World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, who, by the way, are backstage watching the monitor. They continue dissing pretty much the majority of the tag team division, including the has-beens that are SCU, so another cheap shot delivered there. So the Motor City Machine Guns against the Acclaimed on their debut, and it's not the best of starts to life in All Elite Wrestling for the Acclaimed, as it is the Motor City Machine Guns who pick up the win after 9 minutes 55. Chris Sabin pinning Anthony Bowens with a Made in Detroit. Motor City Machine Guns, ever since arriving, they are unbeaten in the tag team division. They are looking really good. Decent performance there. Well, after the match, as the Motor City Machine Guns celebrate in the ring, both Max Caster and Anthony Bowens are on the outside picking each other up. They don't stay up for long, as attacking them from behind is Santana and Ortiz of the Inner Circle. They are relentless. Max Caster gets thrown into the guardrail. Anthony gets nailed with the loaded sock. Proud and powerful of the Inner Circle making themselves known. Matt and Nick Jackson run out and confront them both as Motor City Machine Guns watch on from the ring. The lights go out. When they come back on, there are numerous Dark Order creepers ringside. They attack everyone in sight. Santana Ortiz manage to escape through the crowd. The creepers eventually leave. The Acclaimed down and out. The Young Bucks hurting. The Motor City Machine Guns trying to get back to their feet. Are the Dark Order about to make a huge return? Well, we haven't seen the Dark Order. We haven't heard from them for many weeks after the unfortunate passing of Mr. Brody Lee and the abrupt end to that story with the Inner Circle as well. So this is a fresh start now for the Dark Order. Alex Marvez is backstage. Alright, with me at this time, Tessa Blanchard. Tessa, you debuted on the Dynamite after Revolution and made quite a stir amongst the women's locker room. But the question that everyone wants to know, when will you step in the ring? Funny you should ask, Alex, because just a moment ago I was told by Tony Khan that my debut match will take place at Blood and Guts, the biggest stages for the biggest performers. And then Mickie James interrupts. Biggest stages for the biggest performers? Darling, I hadn't even heard of you until you shacked up here the other week. You know what? I don't like your attitude. I hope Tony hasn't booked you with anyone yet, because I want in. I'd love nothing more than to wipe that smirk off your face and teach you a little respect. And I gladly accept. Has been. Tessa walks off, leaving Mickie speechless. So there we go. Another match made for Blood and Guts. Tessa Blanchard against Mickie James. It's Tessa's in-ring debut here in All Elite Wrestling. And I'm sure it's going to be a good match and with a good rating, hopefully. And, well, this one wasn't a good rating, was it? Between Dr. Britt Baker and Nyla Rose. Hopefully this is the end between these two. So Britt Baker picks up the win. It's a surprise roll-up. It's the only way, really, that someone like Britt Baker is going to get one over on such a beast that Nyla Rose is. I think it's either got to be a count-out, it's got to be a tainted win, or it's got to be a fast roll-up, something to catch him off guard. Well, after the match, Britt Baker celebrates outside the ring after grabbing the tights of Nyla Rose to get the win. As she stands at the top of the entranceway, she mocks the women's title around her waist. Hikaru Shida attacks out of nowhere with her kendo stick. Brutal shots over and over until Britt runs off. Shida looks good, looks strong, standing tall at the top of the entranceway, and she holds her kendo stick aloft to chants of "Holy Shida," as that gets a 44. So Shida trying to get a name back into the title picture. Backstage, we then see both Jake Roberts and Lance Archer. Jake is about to say something, but Lance cuts in and says, "Jeff Hardy, at Revolution, you and your brother were very fortunate to walk out of that steel cage standing. At Blood and Guts, I have you all for myself. You won't believe in the arena standing. Once again, it'll be another tragedy for Jeff as he's carted away, but this time, you won't be coming back. I'll be the last man standing." As Lance Archer walks off, he grabs hold of a backstage worker and throws him into a wall, and then dumps him into a trash can. As this segment gets to 65, so slight bit of build up towards the last man standing match between Jeff and Lance Archer at Blood and Guts, and that will hopefully put an end to the storyline. Chris Jericho is then seen walking into the Inner Circle locker room. He approaches Sammy with some paper and a clipboard, shades of his time in that other promotion. Okay, so we have a list of potential suspects who could have attacked you the other week. Sammy replies with, "Let's hear them then." Okay, so there is that snotty Joey Janela, Too Cold Scorpio Sky, straight out the 80s Brian Pillman Jr. I used to know his dad, you know. An over 50 Christopher Daniels. But, Chris, you're over 50. Jericho replies with, "Don't interrupt, Sammy." Then there is that dragon or more like the Lizard Brandon Cutler and Warhorse. But he likes my music, so he's kind of cool. But don't worry, Sammy, because starting next week, I'm going to go through all of them, teach them all a lesson, and hopefully by the time you're healed, we'll have found the culprit. Now rest up, and I'll see you later. Jericho tapping Sammy's bad leg on the way out as he leaves the Inner Circle locker room. So a list has been created by Chris Jericho of potential suspects that could have attacked Sammy Guevara, and we're going to be going through those over the coming weeks, and hopefully it leads to something special for the storyline. Wardlow makes his way to the ring. His opponents, TNT, sons of Devon Dudley, also making their debut here tonight on Dynamite. Watch on from inside the ring. Not looking at all happy about this. Wardlow's set to take his frustration out on them. Before the ref can call for the bell to get the match underway, MJF's music hits and he walks out dressed in his suit and Burberry's scarf. He has a mic and says, "War Dog, listen, I want to apologise for the last month or so. I neglected you. I see that now. Last week was just strictly business. Maybe after you've beaten those two young punks, we can discuss maybe a new and improved contract." The ref calls for the bell as MJF continues to stand and watch at the top of the entranceway. So MJF going over Wardlow last week in that World Title Eliminator tournament. It's just strictly business. Now he wants to discuss a new contract with Wardlow. Something just doesn't seem right. And this match, although getting a 25, it was always planned to be quite the squash match. 3 minutes 35, Wardlow pinning Terrell Hughes. Wardlow carrying the match with a 46 there. Still got a lot to learn, Terrence and Terrell. But saying that, debuting, pretty decent rating there from the crowd. After the match, Wardlow heads towards MJF as they look at one another. MJF says to Wardlow, "What do you say, huh?" Wardlow grabs the mic and says, "Face me at Blood and Guts. You win, we enter negotiations. I win, I go my own way. And this is over." Wardlow drops the mic and walks off, leaving MJF speechless. So Wardlow laying down the gauntlet. They are set to face one another again. They did so well last week in that World Title Eliminator. I felt as though we had to do it again, but with a bit more of a stipulation instead of it just being who advances through to the next round of the tournament. JR, well folks, next week is all about Blood and Guts, and just announced by Tony Khan, the Blood and Guts match will be, you guessed it, Culture Shock colliding with the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and the AEW World Champion, Jon Moxley. What a match that should be, and for the first time in AEW's history. And if that's not all, JR, Blood and Guts, Lance Archer will face Jeff Hardy in a last man standing match, and also MJF has no other option than to face Wardlow once again. If MJF wins, they will negotiate a new contract. Wardlow wins, he goes it alone as a singles competitor. Gentlemen, what about next week here on Dynamite though? Gallows and Anderson in action against the Motor City Machine Guns Plus, and how about this for a main event? CM Punk against Kenny Omega for the first time ever. Should be a wild week of action here in AEW. Hangman Page versus Pentagon Jr. is up next. Penta had requested another singles match after being successful last week against his brother Rey Fenix. Page makes his way to the ring accompanied by Dax and Cash, the tag team champions. They, of course, won those titles off the Lucha Brothers. Penta is out next. He's accompanied by his Death Triangle brothers, Pac and Phoenix. Dax and Cash have a few words for the Lucha Brothers after they beat them at Revolution. Up in their private box, the Private Party sit and watch with interest as we get decent rating for this segment. Just competitors making their entrance and a bit of focus on the Private Party up in their box. Felt so we had to do that because not much has been mentioned since their arrival earlier in the evening. So we head into that match, and in a bout that had great heat and good wrestling, it's Penta El Zelo M that defeats Hangman Page in 17 minutes 43 after a top rope Styles Clash again, following interference from Isaiah Cassidy. I do sum up what happened in the next segment, but we get a 68 for this match. I was hoping we was at least going to be reaching into the 70s, but 68 is still pretty respectable, although I feel in real life these two would properly go ham at it, and I think they'd be fantastic. Hangman Page against Pentagon Jr. just in a singles match, just tearing it up for almost 20 minutes would be something special, I think. And the fact that it had great heat, good wrestling, it got the crowd hotter as well. Well, here I explain what happened at the end. Isaiah Cassidy snuck down to ringside whilst Dax and Cash were arguing with Pac and Rey Fenix. He held on to Hangman Page as he was looking for his buckshot lariat on the ring apron. This allowed Pentagon to hit an enziguri, drag Page into the ring, and then hit his package pile driver for the 3 count, even though it did say top rope Styles Clash. After the bell, Dax and Cash can't believe it as they turn their attention to the ring. They notice Isaiah Cassidy escaping back to the private box as ACH watches on proudly. Penta leaves the ring celebrating with Pac. Phoenix stands at a distance as Death Triangle make their way to the back. The 3, Page, Dax and Cash, are pissed at Private Party. Dax and Cash look to head over the fan barricade again, but get stopped by a line of security making their way down from the private box. There just doesn't seem to be any stopping Private Party at the moment as the 3 leave angrily. They have no other option really. They can't go up and attack the Private Party. They're just surrounded by security up in their private box. Up next then, Kenny Omega makes his entrance, followed by Jon Moxley. They stand together in the ring as they await Culture Shock. CM Punk, Brody King are out next, but backstage, Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks, are seen stood next to Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, watching a monitor, but they don't seem to be talking to one another. But the fact that they're stood together after last week's interactions and the week before as well, something could be brewing here. We'll just have to wait and see. But the main event is fantastic. It's an 82. It's an exceptional match, and it's Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega that defeat CM Punk and Brody King in 15 minutes 50. Moxley pinning Brody after a paradigm shift. Brody King, the weakling, but saying that, still putting a great performance, drawing in a 62 there. Everyone else, well, CM Punk, very consistent with his in-ring performances. Every match I've put him in, he always gets an 80. So we can always rely on him, and I'm sure we'll be turning to some of his performances as well in that Blood and Guts match. Hopefully we can bring it on home in that main event next Saturday. CM Punk and Brody King, after losing, slowly make their way up the entrance ramp, watching Kenny and Jon Moxley pointing. Omega stands just behind Moxley as they both watch CM Punk and Brody King leave. Next week, it'll be Omega versus Punk for the first time ever. So keeping in mind what I've just said, CM Punk quite consistent with his 80 ratings in ring. And if you take into account Kenny Omega's 90 in ring, or is it just under an 89? Anyway, those two are going to have one hell of a main event for the first time ever here on Dynamite. It's pay-per-view worthy. Should be good. Let's see what we've got then to end the show. And it's a 75, so we're not doing too badly. So really a bit disappointed by those two matches. The women's match mainly, because Dr. Britt Baker and Nyla Rose, I know that they could put on a match worthy of 40s up into the 50s, but that one against TNT, I was kind of expecting that between Wardlow, that handicap match. But overall, really happy with the 75, and I'm sure that's done enough to beat NXT in show quality again this week. Let's go and find out. So we got 75, we drew in a total of 1.3 million viewers. Over on TNT, we got 1.27, which saw 959,000 tuning in. Let's have a look at NXT. Now, NXT's weekly show got 74, so we've beaten them on show quality, but they also had a pay-per-view following. I'm not sure how they work this one, actually, because unless they tape this one, but the fact that they've had a pay-per-view also on the Wednesday night, it's a bit strange. Whether it was like an extension to their weekly show, but this one, NXT Night of Mayhem 1, drew just a 68. The main event seeing Kushida defeating Killian Dane for the NXT North American title. I mean, it featured a lot of their main stars. Triple H making an appearance there with an interview, always getting a 68. But this event, I don't think it featured anyone like Tommaso Ciampa. And I don't think it featured Johnny Gargano either. Although a video recapped the Gargano and Killian Dane feud. Dane was in that main event for the NXT North American title, which he did go on to lose. It's an interesting one. I'm not sure how they would have worked that, whether, again, if it was an extension to the weekly show, maybe. I'm not sure how they've done it. But anyway, that is going to be it for this episode of AEW Dynamite. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all soon for the next one.